So hello everyone, once again, thank you so much for joining us. So in today's session, we'll be learning about Terraform Provisioners. So there are different type of provisioners and why we are using that and what can benefit us, right? So then later on, we will also be discussing about the research topic, which we will be discussing on Terraform modules. On the code level, we will try to understand. And also we do have some assignment also where we have discussed yesterday, right? These challenges. We'll be discussing this as well. Okay, so first of all, let us go with the first, that is your Terraform provisioners. This will be not like it will be only theoretical. Okay, next week we'll start with the practical as well. So, uh, say for example, Terraform provisioner, basically what is Terraform provisioners, right? Say if you go the definition according to the official documentations, you can use provisioners to model specific actions on the local machine or the remote machine in order to prepare servers or other infrastructure object for service. So that means, say for example, you are going to basically provision. Let me show you. Let's say you have some. This is a virtual machine, right? Let's say you are going to write some Terraform code here. I mean, you have written some Terraform code. It is related to what? It is related to your virtual machines creation, right? So this is basically going to create the virtual machines now. So in order to basically, apart from the creation of the virtual machine, you also want to basically do some other additional tasks within your virtual machines, right? So in this case, what we can do is we can use the provisioners. There are, depends on the situations, we can have a different type of provisioners, right? So as I mentioned, there are three types mostly being used in the provisioners. If you take a look this thing, right, we have three types provisioners. As I told you, basically if you want to provision something, let's say, as I told you, there are three types. The first one is a file provisioners. As name suggests, file provisioners is nothing but whenever you are dealing with a file. So you might be thinking what exactly it means, right? So file provisioner in the sense, say for example, now you have a virtual machine now here, right? You created everything now. I have written subcool also high level. You can see also, right? Now, if you see here, right, we have a provisioners under same version machine level, right? So what we can do is that we can actually have a provision, and in my case, it is a file. So you can select this one as a file, because this means now you can see that there is a source. Source nothing but, as I told you, the name suggests we are dealing with a file. It does not mean only the file, it can be a folder as well. Okay, but so this basically nothing but I have a, there is something called as a in my particular directory, right? In this particular directory there is a something called as a bm configuration dot txt. I have a file. It could be any file, doesn't matter for us. Okay, it could be any file. So what basically I want is, I want this particular configuration file, basically whatever file it is, I want to move it to where there is a destination given. If you see that this, I want to basically move this file to my, or copy this file to my this location. This is a C drive in your windows, and there is a temporary folder under here. I am going to basically keep it. If you see, whenever you are creating the virtual machine, there will be a temporary file created for you. But don't think only this can be the part. You can give anything your choice, right? So you can give in D drive or C drive with particular part your wish. That I'm just giving as an example of these locations. That means what it is going to do, it is going to copy the file or the folder whatever you have, this particular directory from this particular local system. That means this particular system. This means this particular file, always try to remember this basically works your local listing. Now from the local, this is the reason why it is taken the local part of your systems, right? And it is moving to where, once the bm is created, this particular file is going to be moved or maybe copy into the particular windows, that is same windows of the windows virtual machines. It is going to be copied and move here. Okay, then we all know, right, how they are going to authenticate, right? Simply they cannot move the, or maybe without having the access to the server, right? So there will be some mechanism where you can basically access to the server and you can basically do your stuff, right? This is the reason why I have a something called as a connection block. In connection block, first thing I need the what is type. type is, what is this type basically? This type is basically for your different kind of protocol, you can call it, right? Protocol we have, let's say in Linux we have HSS kind of this thing, and and connection, basically connection type basically. In Linux we have a SSH, in Windows we have a WinRM, right? So there are different types of connection type, as I told. So depends on the operating system that you'll be dealing with. Okay, now we have understood the type. We have understood the type level. Then we have also understood. I mean, then we have to understand the host. What is the host meaning actually here? Host here is nothing but, as I told you, you are going to basically copy the file from this location, right? That is a local system into where, into in this particular virtual machines, right? So in order to basically move or maybe copy the file, you need to basically also be needing the IP address, right? Or somewhere you need to have it. This is the reason why dynamically they are trying to access the IP address. Basically, this is the IP address that they are going to be access it. Okay. So what they will do is that, as I told you, once they access to these virtual machines, then like we need IP address, right, to log into the basically server or everything. So this is the thing, right? Then once we are good with this thing, what is the next now? We need to use the username password also. If you have the IP address, this is a very common things, right? We would be needing the username, then we will be needing a password. We also be needing the port, as we all know, for every single basic like what is it type connection type, there will be different kind of port number create use, right? Say for example, if you're talking with the Windows RDP, we use 3389. Similar way, we are working with the WinRM protocol. We are going to be use there is a this thing 5985, and one is a five. There's a client and server. Okay, the one is, this is a 5985. Another one is 5986. Okay, in my case I have given as a insecure is equal to true, because as I told you, this is just going to be used for your specific level only, like BM level only, right? This is the reason why we are using this thing. Okay, now what is the next now? Now, once we have all this access or all these connect like prerequisites in place, then they are able to basically, they are able to what is it, move the file into the particular place. This is the thing. Now, similar way, we have second one. So as I told you, this file provision basically where you can basically store or move your file from local to your remote drive in the same local system. Sorry, in the same system where you are going to provision. Or let's say in my case I have only one, depends on the block, right? In my case there is only one resource going to be created, depends on TFVars file. Let's say in your TFVars file, if you have a one more block, that means one more resource is going to be created dynamically, right? Depends on the conditions. So in this case, for each VM also going to be provisions. So why we are using this one? What is the benefit of using this file provision? Say for example, we all know, right? You're working with the VM. You are not just going to basically create the VM. You need to basically move some file from local system to that, do some tasks there, some related, right? Or maybe certificate related or any kind of things you want to move some files or folder, whatever. So in this case, this is very much helpful, team. Okay. Now let's go with the next one. Remote-exec. What is a remote-exec now? Remote-exec also, it works very similar of the local file, but here one thing we need to understand here, remote basically works, let's say I have a, I think, let me show you the example. I have everything, right? Let me show you. Yeah, file I have shown you. Okay, yeah, this one, right? Remote, yeah. So remote basically, remote exec provisioners invokes a script on a remote system after it is created. That means remote basically, whenever we are working with the remote exec provisioners, this particular can be used only when the resource being created successfully. What it means basically, that means you you first need to have this, basically you need to create the virtual machines. That means you need to create, it has to get created first, the virtual machines or whatever resource it is, then only we can use the remote exec. This This can be used to run configuration management tool or bootstraps into a cluster or anything. That means if you want to run some configuration files, you want to store something there, or you want to run some script, PowerShell script, or could be any script. So you might be thinking, is it possible not usually to run the PowerShell script or anything in your Terraform? The answer is yes. There is a feasibility, we have it, but we cannot store or we cannot keep within your Terraform code. I mean, in the like block level, you have to get a extra like what you call this inline script within your Terraform. We can use that. Okay. So as I told you, we have understood this file provisioner related. Now, if you see here, remote exec, we have copied the file to this particular server, to this particular directory if you want to move it. So as I told you, once you install, as you have to run some script, right? To basically do some activity or to do something, right? So this is the reason why, as I told you, here we have inline script. So similar way, as I told you, if you want, what I can do is I can, no, it's okay, right? I can show you also. Now I can type provisioners. As you type provisioners here within the same line of your VM block, you have to type the provisioners, right? There is a provisioner. As you type there, as I told you, there are three types of provisioners. Automatically you will be pop up. The first one I have already shown you also. The second one is a remote exec. Remote exec. Now as I told you, as you type remote exec, you can see, you can use, what you do, simply use the put your cursor there, control space, you do automatically Terraform, sorry, the VS Code would give you some basically indications what you want to use here, whether you want to use inline failure script or scripts when. So there are different conditions when we need to understand it. Okay, now let's go with the inline. If I type inline now, you can see now, right? We given the inline, and that inline, basically this is again a, now we can run the script. This is the reason why we need to put what I call the codes there, right? What is this is the square bracket. Now we have used it. Now we can run the script. Now if you see this particular this thing, you can mention any particular time, then we'll sleep for 120 seconds to ensure the Apache's provisions, and then we can run some sudo commands so that the reason why we are using the sleep 20-second, 120 second is because it takes time for your virtual machine to get created, right? So not after creation also, you may need some time to wait also in order to log into the server, right? This is the reason why we are using the sleep conditions here, so that we can wait for some second and then we can run the script that is for the sudo, using sudo. Then they will go to copy the file, whatever file you have, to where in the same systems as I told you, this particular directory, right? So this is one of the copy where you are going to run some script with the help of inline script basically within your this thing. If you want to have a say with Terraform script also, yeah, okay. Okay, so in case if you have a Terraform script also, you can use it. Let's say you have a Terraform script, sorry, not Terraform script, PowerShell script or any other. So this is a Linux script. It depends on the your case to case. It may varies, but it is possible to run PowerShell as well as Bash script. Don't worry. Okay, both supports. Now I can run your commands, whatever commands I have to do based on the your activity. Then we'll go with the local. Local as name suggests, right? This is mean for your dealing with the local. So the local exec provisioner invokes a local executable after a resource is created. This invokes a process or machine running Terraform, not on the resource, right? So now if you see here, as I told you, this is a commands where basically I want to run. Now a command I have given within the locals, and this thing also. Okay, before that, let me cover this also later. I think I missed it. About the remote, right? I still need to explain some more. Sorry for that. Um, remote, let me remove this one first because I wanted to explain some more. Okay, connections mean, as you know, right? You basically need to define connections. So if you give a connections here, you can define your, if you see here, there are different, say for you can see different certificate related host related, you can have it just like just now we have done it here connection block. Basically you have to define your like type, connection type. In my case, it is a WinRM. If it is a Linux, it will be SSH. Same host, you can define a public IP address of your VM and then username, password, and a port number, etc. Okay. Now, next, after connection, what else we need? Sorry. Yeah, we got with the connection. Next, what we also have inline. As I told you, if you want to run some script within the inline, just now we had explained, right, that we can run it inline to run some script within your virtual machines. Now, next we have it on failure. What is it on failure? This basically, if you see here, there is a two option in failure condition as a true, sorry, continue and fails. That means this particular script, whether even the if you see remote-exec, you will run continue means even after failure also whether your script to be continue or not, that condition. Otherwise, if you don't want to continue, as I mentioned, there will be option to fail. If based on a condition, let's say I want to run this Linux virtual machine now. For any reason, something's fail while provisioning this thing. Whether you want that to be continue, if that is fail, or if it is fail also, you want to basically continue. The choice also is up to you. Now next we have it script. As I told you, it can have a script. It can be a PowerShell script, or it can define a list of script over here. Then we have it. What else? Let me move this one. Then we have a when condition basically, this is also kind of one conditions. Why we are using the when here is because, say for example, you have created the virtual machine now. Now after creation the virtual machine, you want to basically do some activity. Say for example, up when this particular example, I'm giving the first example of create. When create is equal to creator, and that means after creation of the virtual machines, when is a condition basically, right? So when particular virtual machines is getting created, or maybe after creation of the virtual machines, you want to send some logs to certain resource, sorry, I mean destination, right? So in this case we can use the when is equal to create. So whenever it is created, you will having some, you can send some logs. Say for example, you can check some logs in the sense you can send your activity logs, not activity, basically event logs, or you want to run some script, you want to install some Apache or something, right? So then you want to basically, when it is created, you can basically define this kind of some conditions there. Similar to a destroy also, when it is destroy, let's say you want to run some script so that the script can send some basically information to certain users. That level users means within this what I call so remote one. Okay, so that is also possible, we have it. Now let's go with the next one. Remote. Okay, yeah. So let's go with the local. As I told you, local mean for the same running your basic invoking the script basically into your local systems. So similar concept it works. Here you can see commands echo. You can run some commands here. Then this example you want to send, you can send to this particular file. And working directory also you can mention what is a working directory where you want to keep this thing basically stored. And we have one more like this thing, right? Destroy time provisioners trigger during the destroy resource. Like say whenever anything like destroy, as I told you, so we can see when. So whenever you want to destroy, this thing, you can define this when conditions, so that when this particular resource is getting destroyed, when is equal to destroy, right? So that means you want to send some like logs to this thing, right? You can say like the commands you can run echo, you can destroy time, whatever name you want to define here, everything you can send it like that. This can be not just the this thing, you can use your PowerShell, Bash, or any other language that you prefer with. Then as I told you, directly you can define it. That is how we can basically use it using the this thing. Now we have uh, okay, remote, right? So now we have one more example. So this just now we have covered about the remote. So let's go with the next one. There's something called a null resource. Nulls and provision mostly work together. The question is, what is a null resource? Null basically, you if you need to run provisioners that are not directly associated with specific resource, you can associate them with a null resource. Instance of null resource are treated like normal resource, but they don't do anything. Same as other resource, you can configure provisioners and connection details on a null resource. So it means that, say for example, if you notice, for every single resource, say for I want to do some action, right? I want to create some virtual machines. There will be always resource block. Say example, this is a resource. This is the type of the resource, right? That means by seeing this one, you can easily identify that, okay, this particular block with the resource block, you can see this name, right? That means Azure RM Linux virtual machine. That means you can easily identify that this is going to be created the virtual machines, that is the Linux, right? So same way, if you talk about any other example, let's say I'll give any other example, say for example, public IP address, by seeing the resource block that is going to create, and you can see the resource basically type, you can easily identify this is going to be created as a public IP address. But when comes to the what I call null resource, it's not like that. As I told you, this is basically just to associate your existing resource so that they can run some script. So there is no any proper basic resource block for that. For now, you can understand this way. Say for example, if you see resource are given, right, in null resource. Okay, yeah, yeah. So if you talk about the time resource, right, wait for 90 seconds after creation the above resource virtual machines. So you want to basically wait that to be waited for 20 seconds or maybe 90 seconds, whatever the time that you want to define. Depends on, you can define it. So this particular is normally we do not have any block, right? If you see here, I have not defined any particular resource block. I have not defined a resource block here. Then I can define depends on this thing. Otherwise, if you see here, here also, if I talk about here, within the same the public IP address, I'm saying this is basically meta argument, right? If you talk about the depends on, they have reduced it. This is the meta arguments. Now, that means even same thing, I want to do it for the public IP Linux related things. So what I can do that within the same line, maybe I can define here, maybe here I can define, I can use a depends on here, right? So if I use a depends on, now I can mention in my case Azure RM. This is for the Linux, right? Linux. Like this, I can use it, right? So this means that I'm going to tell that this is what after creation, before creation of the public IP address, I first it has to create the virtual machine, that is a Linux. That way, let's say if you have a multiple like depends on, what you can do is instead of using this way, you can define this way as well. Like I'll show you like this, right? Like there I can dot name, whatever name I can give, or the name if one I can give name like that, right? So I can give like this. If you have multiple, like then now you can give like this. If you have the this, let's say that means this particular IP address belongs to some other resource, means I can mention depends on your requirement. Whatever you want to mention, you can define like this. You don't need to do this thing. You can just define this thing also. You can define like this. Okay, that means before creation of the public IP address, I first need to create this string. That way we can define. Same way, but if you want to do it for the other resource, as I told you, how are you going to do it for let's say this level, right? We don't have any resource block to do it on certain level, right? This is the why I can use the uh, null resource, and I can define the any name depends on your wish, and I can define it depends on the virtual machine name. Okay, that way we can mention. And the creation durations, create duration, they have given 90 seconds. Now, as I told you, null resource and provisioners, they mostly work together, depends on the situations again. So if you see here, Terraform null resource be given, in my case null resource are given here, and this is again local name, right? And depends on this time, then it has to get triggered, always update some time span stamp, right? So that way we can do it. And we have again, as I told you, connection block for provisioners to connect to the VM instance. So we all know, right? So we need to basically connect to the particular server in order to basically do some activity or some action, or let's say you want to install some tools, right? So you would be needing these details, right? SSH type or the host details and the username, and private key is depends on this thing. You can basically work this one is working with the Linux, so we can use a private key. Otherwise, if you have the username password also, we can define that also, so both works fine. So file provisioners, copy file. This is of app1 folder to particular temporary file. So similar way we can do it. Okay. So this is where basically we can work with the provisioners basically. Now, once we done, as I told you, null and the provisioners. Now we have a remote-exec, provisioners, copies. Yeah, this is again same concept just now we have discussed, right? In the remote, we can put some inline, and then we can run some commands to basically execute. So if you don't know the commands, you can use a lot of source we have, right? You can use a PowerShell, Bash, and all. If you don't know how to do it, but if you know the concept, you can simply use ChatGPT, get the script ready, you can test it out and see that. Okay, so it is not mean that you should know the script language or maybe anything. You should be very much clear with your requirement, exactly what you're going to achieve it, right? So if you know your tasks, what are to be performed, then you can easily Google it or maybe use search GPT and get the script, and based on that you can run it. Okay, that's all provisioners and this thing. I will have this thing sessions next week, because everything hands-on if we do, then you may confuse everything. That is the reason I don't want to expand too much, but I want to cover the SRS topic also. This is the reason why we will maybe stop for this particular topic now. Okay, meanwhile, if you have questions, please raise your questions, then we will move to the next topic. Okay, fine, let's go with the next topic then. Okay, next topic. This is about the ESRS challenge team. So if you remember, this is a topic that is Terraform challenge day 2. Create multiple virtual machines. It could be Linux or the Windows, right? Using the forest. Now, this is your challenge, right? Your organization needs to deploy multiple virtual machines. So that is a Windows virtual machines across different environment with unique configuration. That means you need to have for each VM with the different configurations. You are required to use a map of object to define each VM, then use for each to loop through the deploy them efficiently. So I have clearly mentioned also you have to use a map of object. So it will be much easier for you to identify the challenges, right? But sometimes you may not have that kind of things. Say for when it comes to the interview related, you might be asked like, how are you going to create multiple virtual machines with the different configurations, right? That kind of scenario might be given. So you need to explain them. So you have to give a different situations. Then you need to understand whether you have to understand the proper requirement of the ask, right? So if they're asking the unique configurations, right? If they're asking with the unique configuration, or maybe it's like for each VM has to be different configuration, that means there is only one way of doing using map of object. Yeah, only one way of doing using map of object. Otherwise, second way we can use a list of object. But I would not suggest you to use the list of object, rather go with the map of object. Okay, and the reason why, again, I'm telling always, right, why to use forest always. I'm not saying always to use it. Depends on the situation, how complexity you are thinking, or maybe the company requires, right, for your infrastructure to be managed. Say for example, as we all know, when we refer to yesterday's topic, we do have a virtual machines here, right? We have a virtual machines. Where is that? Here. Now, virtual machine, whenever we create, it is not mean that we will only have one virtual machine created. Of course, we will have a different environment, right? Let's say we have a dev environment, we have a staging environment, and then we have a production or prod environment. Now, for each environment, the configuration may varies. That is 100% sure. That will change it according to the environment. The configuration would be changed. But then, how are you going to make sure that it is deployed according to the environment specific as well? At the same time, with a different value. That means with different configuration of your virtual machines. I'm not just talking about the virtual machine. It could be any other resource you think about. So let's say for example, you are uh, dealing with the storage account, you are dealing with maybe MySQL, you are dealing with a cluster, maybe Kubernetes or anything, right? So we will not have everything. So what we need to understand here is that first of all, understand the resource first. What resource basically you're going to create? Let's say in our case, we are dealing with the virtual machines. Now you are very much clear that in any organizations there will be not only one VM. You'll be having multiple VM created or use it. That means you need to think that situation, how I can make sure that is dynamically use it or maybe created as and when required, depends on the situations or requirement. So you have to think all the scenario with all different kind of challenges, right? So first thing what you need to understand here is that I need to create the virtual machine. That means first requirement you are clear. That means operating system type should be second requirement, whether it is a Windows or Linux. So if you're dealing with the Linux and Windows, now as I have given the demo yesterday, like this is a Windows related and this is a Linux related, you might be thinking, Hriyen, why can't we use in one configurations? There is nothing wrong creating one resource block for the Linux and one resource block for the Windows. It is absolutely fine. We can do it. But only reason why I want to differentiate is because I want to use much more dynamic way. Say for example, if you see here with these conditions, we have already discussed yesterday, right? For is we are using the for expressions key. Key is nothing but the kind of, let me show you this basically. Now we have a virtual machine here. This is a key, right? This is a key. This is another key. And this is basically on, and this whatever you have within here we have a value, right? All this value. That means if you call with this thing, you'll have all the value here. Now is inside this only we'll have multiple key value pair again, right? We have, let's say, name is equal to this name and then resource group is equal to this name and so on. Similar way they have another key or this thing, then we have a again key value pair again here, right? So on the high level this is basically this thing. Now that means now, and if you talk about the, you can for now maybe you can ignore this one, just think about the inside this level, right? I mean at least not there till inside this level, right? If you think about this mask, what you need to understand here, first thing is a virtual machine name, right? Second thing is the resource group name. Third is the resource type, sorry, the resource basically operating type as a type, like that is your whether it is Windows or Linux. In my case I given Windows. Then size, everything I have given it according to this thing. Now same way for Linux also, it also if you see here, type I have given as a Linux. The reason why I'm giving like this is because if you remember for virtual machines whenever I create, the properties of the basically Linux sometimes varies, right? But then we don't have to think much in that way. You can use in one configuration also, that it still works fine. I'm not saying not to use it, you can use it. But only one thing reason why I'm using here is that if you notice, I'm mentioning every single VM I mentioned type as Linux this thing, right? So I can manage this thing. Now you can see the Windows. Now based on this condition also, I can actually use, because if you see here, this time it is dealing only with the Linux because is equal to Linux, because based on the type I'm dealing only with the Linux. So now I cannot use the Linux and Windows both together. So what I did was, this is the reason why I'm always using the conditions. I don't want to use together. I want this particular condition should be used if the particular value type or type is equal to line X, then only you have to create the virtual machines. That means this is a specific to the operating system block. Similar way, I cannot have here is equal to again Windows and all. Okay, similar way, we have one more resource for the Windows. This is the local name also I given as, or reference name I given as a Windows M, just for our better understanding. Similar way, I have given value type, or maybe this type is equal to B type is equal to Windows, so that it is now depends on this. If these conditions are matching, then only the particular whatever resource that you have defined in your TFVOS file, you will going to, it is going to be created. Okay, fine. Okay, now let's go with the questions. What is asking? It is clearly says that we need to use a map of object, right? Map of object means it is not saying the single object. Now, question is, can I use a single object to create multiple VMs? What do you think? Just take a maybe 2-second think. If I use, as I told you, single object mean one property, right? Or one attribute. Can I use multiple virtual machines using one single object, not a map, single object? But answer is yes, we can do it. But you might be now again thinking, if it is possible, then why are you still going with the or using a map of object then? That differentiate we need to know, right? So as I told you, with the one single object also we can have multiple resource created. How is it possible? So there is a one more conditions. If you remember, I will maybe make a note here so that it will be easy. As I told you, if you are going with a map, sorry, something called a Terraform meta argument, right? Terraform meta arguments, right? So there are mostly I'm talking about the high level this thing. There are so many meta arguments we have, but we are dealing with the multiple issues creation related challenges. So there will be only two. The first one is, as I told you, for each, right? What is the next one? Second one is count. We are clear. So it is whenever you are dealing with the multiple issues creations with some conditions and all that, or how you want to manage them, go with one of them. So I have already told you multiple times that if you want to use the for each, that means you have to go with the what? You have to go with the map or set of string or strings, whatever string I can mention, right? If you're going with this kind of data type, then you must use the for each. And what about this thing? Second one, second means count. Count means you can count means objects. We can say example single object, just for example. Single object data type. Just mention single object, or just I'll just give as an object. Okay, object type, and also list of object. Sorry, I cannot use the list of object here. Again, if I go with the list of object, then I need to go with the for each. It is not possible. I can only use the object. Here, as I told you, with for each, this also we can use. But as I told you, if you want to define the list of object, we can use it. Here, we can have also one more list of object. But this is, as I told you, I don't recommend you to use it because I don't want to recommend you this one. Okay, not recommended. Okay, I don't recommend that. Because why I don't recommend, because this is not easy to manage it. But if you're going with the map, or maybe setups. Basically, if you're dealing with this forest data type, as I told you, you can go one of them. But if you're going with a map, always that is a good, right? So map means you mostly use a like this type map of object. So you can go with a like this map of object. Map in the sense it will be a map of object, right? Now, let us understand then the difference. Then okay, let's go with the forest. Forest basically first thing, as I told you, it is a map of object means. Now, the coming to the questions one, it is asking using the forest, I need to deploy the multiple resource. Now, just take a look here. I have basically a resource that is related to the Windows now. Now you don't have to think much about the code level, but high level you think now. Here I'm using the forest, right? Maybe in my case, let's not go too advanced. I will ignore for now. What I want is I want to go with a very basic configuration using forest, because this is within some conditions, right? Let's forget about the Windows or Linux. I don't care for now. Let's go with the basic using forest. So what I should have done, if I go with a very simple way, I can use a forest. Now forest I use it, and I have it. If you remember, this is the variable name we have taken, right? This variable name is taken because we have defined the variable with this name, right? I have it. As I told you, map of object, I'm going to use it because this is what this question also was talking about. Map of object I need to use. Now, this all remains as it is. I will not be worrying much about this data type, but for your reference, as I told you, it is used a map of object now. Now, within here, we have all the properties of your basically resource. Okay, so depends on that, all of this thing is gone. So I hope this is clear, right? Now let's go. We understood this level. This is a map of object, but here what I do, then I have to call, because I want to map them for each resource. I want to loop them, right, dynamically. So this is the reason why I use the map of object. I have used it, then I passed all the property as a basically data type. I have passed it in my tfvars file. Before going to the tfvars, let me show you in the main.tf file of your virtual machines. Now what I can do is I can simply do where dot virtual machines, right? I can do like this. That means what is going to do now, here also works very similar. Now this means now it is very easy to understand also compared to this one, right? Here it is saying that using for is, please loop isbm where there is a variable called as virtual machines with the is dot name. Because if you see here how the is dot value came, how this name is coming from, where this particular name is coming from, let us see. Now as I told you, we are dealing with the multiple creation of the virtual machines. So if you go with this particular here, right, what I call virtual machine resource variable. Now what is the asking, they are asking a name. That means I need to define the name of my virtual machines, right? But I given here is dot value dot name. How do you know this is the correct name, or how do you know this is the this thing, right? So let me show you the best way. So I hope this is clear till there, right? You getting the variable, you want to basically calling our from your variable file, call as the virtual machine variable name, sorry, virtual machine name. And then you are now within here, within this one, because this is the map of object, or can be a in my case it is a map of object. Now within this particular variable, now I have it. If you see here, right, I have here, this is the virtual machine variable name, that is where dot I call with this name. Now you can share type, right? In my case type. Now if you remember, there is something called as arguments, right? In Terraform there are two types arguments we can have it. One is a expression and identifier. So another we can call as, can somebody tell me, value key and value, right? That means this is argument key, argument value, right? We can call it the key, this is a value. If you remember last time we have discussed it. That means now if you go to the TFVers file, because name is equal to I given as a string. That means name means nothing but is a BM name. Resource group is equal to string or nothing but is resource group related. Type is nothing but it is a BM type. It is also string. This is all data type I have passed it. But the actual value where I have passed it was, as I mentioned, in the TFVers file. Now in the TFVers file, if you see here, this is the variable name. This name, how does it test name coming from, right? This name actually, whenever you are working with a variable, whatever name you are giving in your variable, right? Same name, let me copy. Same name need to be defined whenever you want to define data type in your TFVers file also. Let's say, let me paste it. Okay, as it is, you have to copy the same name, or it should be the same name. Along with that, how you have defined the data type here, right, in the variable file, whatever information you have passed it, it has to be organized way you can pass it. Okay, but again, you remember one thing. If you let's say resource group here is a line number, some number, like let's say resource group is after the name. But if you come to the TFVers file, if you want to change the first type, then resource group, that also possible, you can do that, also still works. But then the best practice to follow the according to whatever you have defined in your variables file. So as I mentioned, this name is coming from the variables file, and then there is a, this is a within your block. Now this is basically a key. Within here we have a key value pair, as I told you. This is a key, nothing but name is a key. Now if you want to extract, or they basically use the name of the BM name, this is the name I want to use it, right? This is why this, as I told you, argument name, argument value, right? Key value basically. So argument key, this is a key and value pair. So that means I'm referring to the value, right? Because as I told you, key value pair. So this is the name. If you want to call with this name, this is the reason why I'm using, sorry, where is that? I'm using here for is. For is, why is coming? Because as I told you, if you want to call with the different name, if you want to call with the name, I can call because, sorry, key. Key, what happened now? If you use a key, this doesn't make sense now, because you need the, you want to pass the, or you want to basically, you want to call the name of the version mentioned, right? But if you go to the TFVers, as I told you, it is actually a value, it is not a key. This is a key, right? Name is a key, this is a value. If you want to call with this name, you have to call with the value only. This is the reason why I have defined it here as a where is that, yeah, here value, the value. That means this is my answer. Now that I have defined it here, value means always on the right side. Whatever value you want to pass it, that is the right side. Left side means it is a key. Now this one name, from where this name is coming from, because this name is coming from basically, if you see here, we have it in the TFVers file, right? Because it is mapped with the name, right? It is mapped with the name. This is why I have to call it with this name, dot name. Because this is a basically within your name block, right? This is the reason I have used it. Similar way, there is a computer name. You might be thinking, what is this again? This replace. Let me show you. I do say this is optional, but the reason why I wanted to always mention one or the other is because I want you to understand. Replace Terraform to take the place of somebody something to use. Sorry, I need to put a Terraform, right? So now you can see, right? Replace with string, or replace, we have so many things. Replace sources a given string for another given substring. Replace its occurrence with given replacement string. So basically you can replace it with some value. So basically why I'm using it here in our case, basically as I told you, this is a Terraform functions. I want to replace with this name, with this particular name, with some value, other things, right? This is the reason why I'm using this one. Now if you don't want this one, as I told you, This name also, normally, if you remember, whenever you create the virtual machines, the name normally, if BM name is, let's say it's whatever name you have defined, by default, committed name also remains as it is, right? So if you want that situations, you can simply remove this one. I will hash this out, right? I will hash this out. I can simply use same copy paste this one. This also works fine because, as I told you, committed name and the BM name remains by default, it is same. But if you want to change for the committed name, you can change it as I told. Okay. Now next is a virtual machines resource group. This resource group name from where is coming? This is very important, right? Because okay, I think we are building this. Okay. Now we have understood, right? List now what we are doing now. We have understood that whatever we are doing, it will loop for each BM now. Once you loop, as I told you, based on the tiers, if you have another BM, let's say 2-3 BMs, it depends on your requirement. That many it will be loop with the help of map of loop you have defined in that variable file, right? You have defined in your variables map of object, so it will automatically loop it. So that many that many resources going to be created. Similar way, all you can see the restore value and everything. Okay, so that means that many resources going to be created. Okay, that is a thing. So okay, now let me talk about the object then. Object means whenever I use an object, what I need to understand here. We have understood forest, right? Now, now let's go with the count. Basically map. Sorry, object. Object. Let me check if I have some core. Let me check in my variables. Okay, network, I have defined it. I have a resource group map. List of object. I don't need list of object. Okay, object is not there. So object mean, as I told you, is a single properties. Now, just like a map, we can let me write one map object. Now let's say I'm same BM. I want to create a different way, right? So what you can do here, if you see here, this is also object. This is about what? This is about the network related. Now, object mean you can see now type instead of the map of object, just object, and I can mention the BM name, then subnet name, everything I can define it. And here I define the energy role. Energy role is nothing but it is a network security role. Why it is used is because let's say you have a virtual machines created now, right? Now I don't have created anything. Let's say you have created the virtual machine now. Now the virtual machines by default, basically there will be some limited basically access you will get it, right? You don't have a complete access to the VM. So you first need to enable normally if you go in organizations, they will be having a different kind of what is it network configuration. Say for example, they have a firewall, they have a route tables, they have a different kind of load balancer, everything. So the VM will not be accessible directly unless you whitelisted or enabled a particular port. Let's say this is created, one VM is created here. Now I want to add DP, in the sense I want to take a remote so that I can do something on the BM level, right? So in this case, if you just create using Terraform, this will not help you. You need to also enable the particular protocol. Let's say if I want to take the remote of the particular system, so that means I want to take the RDP, right? Remote desktop system. What is it? RDP protocol. So that means I need to enable. Now, if you search here, what is RDP port? It will be 3389, right? So RDP port is 3389. So you can see, right? RDP number port, it is a 3389. So this particular port, it is basically TCS. TCS, there are two types, and TCP and UDP, right? So let's not think that about networking for now. I will explain if it required later. Okay, but for now, just understand this particular port. Basically, this is for the taking the remote. That means I want to take control. If you see here, RDP full form, remote desktop protocol. I want to take basically RDP, so that I want to log into the server and do something, right? Some activity. It could be I want to install some web, let's say internet related things, or maybe some Chrome, or I want to install any other tools also, right? So that case, if you simply use a Terraform, let's say with this script, whatever BM is there, I will not be able to create basically what is it, access it. If you have a BM already in place also, you cannot create it. The reason being, as I told you, you need to enable it. So this is the reason why what we did was we have separate folder for the networking. But let's not don't be confused again. This network, as I told, this is a separate module. That is why I have used it. You can keep in the within your BM module also. But we are learning the module yesterday. This is the reason why I have placed them all the network related into separate modules called as network. Okay. Now, if you go here on the network level, so whenever you create a BM, right, BM would have a certain dependencies. You cannot just create the BM, it will not work that way. So you need to establish some communications or some connections in order to work the BM as expected. So first thing, we need to basically have the whenever you're dealing with the BM, I'm saying it, you first need the network. Basically, that is your you can see, right, network. Sorry, not this one, this is a resource group. Resource group is required always, that you will be placing all your resource within the resource group, right? Resource group thing just like a container where you place all your resource. Then, as I told you, resource group, once we create the resource group, inside the resource group we are going to create the network. That is a bnet. Bnet is nothing but it is a virtual network. Okay, so why virtual network is used here? Because whenever you create the virtual machines, by default you don't want everybody to have access. So in the cloud it has to be isolated network, in the sense it kind of a isolated environment in your cloud infrastructure. So this is the reason why we are placing them in particular, so that other person would not have access to your network or the BM level. This is the reason why, if you see here again, I'm using, if it is a creator with some conditions, I have used it. So why I have used it, this one, if you see on the network, uh, network, right, here, here I give them boolean true or false. The reason why I want to do is that, say for example, you want to use some other modules, that time you want to create a new basically configurations or anything, with this particular argument you can change the behavior if you want to. Then this all name also coming, right, basically what you call name. This is coming from where? This is all coming from your variable file, right? So here be given the name, subnet name, everything, right? So you need to understand that data why we are using. Now, first of all, let me give a small idea about the object here, because as I told you, object can be used only we have a single this thing. But as I told you, with count you can use a if you see here, right? Count we can use a object, right? So that you need to keep in mind. But then while using it, now for example, while using the resource block, what you can do is you can use a for each. If you, I mean, it is already for each is the key or value, right? This can be used only for the for each. But if you're dealing with the object, how are you going to deal then? In this case, you cannot use this value. So rather, you have to use where the variable name. Object means basically thing. That means you have to specify particular property. But here mean for each configurations or each resource, based on the properties, it will be mapped it. Here it will not map everything. Here means you have to define the object level. I will show you this also. Okay, let's say I can give a network dot name. Like that I have to define. But yes, I can define some other condition also based on if it is enabled like this. I can define the 1 then space 1 0 like this also I can define, depends on the condition basically. But let's not think much now. Let me show you in this thing. Now first let me talk about the we know already, right? Security group network, like this is basically the resource group, right? RG resource group. You can see definition also given here. You can see definition related variable including bnet, subnet and energy. The reason why I have defined the bnet, subnet, energy, because as we all know, as I told you, bnet is something you have to define it when you work with the creation of any resource in your cloud, right? It has to be used or deployed in certain environment, right? So that they can manage the network related, maybe access related or anything. Subnet level means within the is bnet, you can have a multiple subnet, right? Now in each subnet, you will have a different IP range. Say for example, here on the bnet level, let's say you have a IP range, let's say 10.0.0.0./16. By default, this will be the basic IP range in your basically what is it bnet level. But then in the subnet level, you would not have, rather you would have, instead of this one, you can have it like 10.0.1.0./24. Okay, if if you notice here, I have given here 10 or some number, but here I given /64, I mean 24. That also we need to know the difference actually. But let's not think much about for now. As I told, we will not be focusing that. And then we have a energy. Energy, why we require here is because energy full form is a network sec sorry network correct me, network security security group, right? So if you see the definitions also, right, what we need to understand here, um, that means they are dealing with the more of the security level. That means now if you have a multiple VMs created, normally you will not have XVM to have access, right? So what you want is that you want to define certain block basically, like you want to restrict some access that only certain user or certain person or maybe from certain network, they can access to the particular your network. Within, as I told you, this is a high level, right, in the network level. But then here you cannot, this particular energy, right, network security group, you will not be able to assign on your bnet level. Bnet level, then who can control this, who can control the access or maybe this thing on the bnet level? That is comes the different, that is a firewall. But on your low level, that is, let's say subnet level, or maybe you can say as a subnet level, then we have a NIC level. So if you're dealing with the NIC, sorry, NIC, you can assign two level. One is your subnet and NIC. Okay, that means if you want to define some policy, that means this policy can be, let's say, I want to give access to the VM because we are going to create the VM. On the energy level also, I need to basically give some permission. Let's say I want, after creation of the VM, I want to take a control so that I can install some tools. Let's say I want to do that way. So in the energy level, I need to associate create the role for the energy for particular requirement. In my case, RDP related. In my case, as I told you, you need to define the RDP port. That is this particular port, you need to enable it, right? And you can define in this here. Then, as I told you, this policy, this is just like a policy where you can define into two different level. One is your subnet level, second is your NIC level. Now question is, this NIC, whenever I create, from where they are getting the IP address? See, this particular subnet, sorry, biner have a different IP range, subnet would have a different IP range, but what about the NIC? NIC, from where are they going to get the IP address? They are going to get the IP address from the subnet level. That means whatever IP range you have from the subnet level only, they'll be getting the IP address. Because why the NIC also required? We all know, right? Every single computer we use, there will be NIC card adapter we have it, right? So why we want that? So that we can access it to antenna or anything, right? So without having the NIC card, you cannot browse or do anything. So why we require means it is, as I mentioned, you need it because you want to access it to the antenna and do something, right? This is the reason why. But then, as I told you, the IP address would be getting from this thing. For every single, there will be IP address assigned. So that you will be getting from your subnet level. Okay, this is the high level. So let's not go that details. Coming to the point, we have everything I have defined it here. Now I want to show you something. If you see here, under resource group, I mentioned here network creator boolean. What is the boolean? Why I given? Because I want to make sure that if it is true, then it has to create the network. That is your bnet. If it is false, then it will not create. The condition I want to do it. This is the reason why I given the boolean, like true or false. And similar way, I have given the resource group as an object because why I want to define as an object, because I have a two different value here. That is your name and the value. Now, if you see like here, right, we have a object. Object means that's basically you will have a it's a setup. It's attributes, right? That means you will have a of attributes of resource group name, resource group location. This is the reason why I'm using an object. Similar way. Now let's come to the energy role. Just now we discussed here, right? We need to define the role within the network. I need to define the role so that it will be list of object. Now, as I told you, object is nothing but it is a attributes, right? For set of attributes. Now, why I put a list? Because I will have a multiple list of object, because I will not just have, let's say I want to access it. I have enabled the port this particular 3389. If you want to work with the same energy role, you want to work with the Linux, then you have to enable the protocol, or maybe for basically SSH, you need to enable the double two, right? Or maybe if you want to browse HTTPS, you can use the 4439, 449. I mean 443. 443 you have to use for HTTPS. HTTPS port number. You can say 443. Okay. So for each one, we'll have a different port number. Same thing for if you want to resolve the DNS, it will be 53. DNS port, it will be 53. So there is some common thing that we need to understand. Same thing if you want to with the DHCP, then it will have a different port number. It will be 68 and 67. DHCP for the HCP, right? 68 and 16. They have 68 and 67. We have one is a server, second is a client. So like this, we have so many. Same thing if you want the HTTPS, HTTP, it will be 80, right? We all know we have not been to work with the HTTP also something. It will be port 80 port, right? So like this, for each one, we have to this thing. There is a 80 as I told you, and this is for a secure. This is for the only with the S. So okay. So this is where we need to define it. Now, if you see here, this is the reason why I will not be using only one basically role, right? I have to define, depends on this requirement, multiple role, right? That is a network role. So this is the reason why I have defined the role as a list of objects, so that I can have a multiple properties or object and map them. That is why I have defined everything. Let's say whenever I want to basically define, I need a role name, priority, and the direction, access, and the protocol, source, direction, everything I needed, right? So this all I have passed it in my here DevOps file. If you go to the here, it can network, right? You can see here. This all know this is a variable name we define. We passed it from the variable, same name we given, right? Then we give bnet name, whatever bnet name I want, I passed it here. Address space also I have passed it. This is the address space I was explaining. Then bnet name also I given the name I want. Prefix, this is for the basically subnet level. This is for the bnet level. Address space for the bnet level, and address prefix for the subnet level. Then energy name, whatever name I want, you can change anything that you wish to. And then network created. In my case, I given as a true. That means if it is true in the TF bus, it will going to create. If you giving as a false, then it is not going to create. Same thing for the resource group for my particular network also I given as this name. So this can be changed according to requirement. Now coming to the network rule, this is very important. Now if you notice here, this has a separate basic block where for the network security, I have as I told you, I have different rule I need to define. Now let's say if you see the name, this is the energy rule name allow RDP. That means this is about the allowing the RDP access. So I given the priority also as 100, then direction it will be inbound because the request is going to become inside of your VM, and access I want to allow it, and protocol as we all know this will be a TCP, and source port range I given as asterisk nothing but, or star is nothing but everything, right? And now destinations mean, as we all know where this request is going to be sent, right? It will be to the RDP port. This is the reason why I have given the port number. Even if you don't want to do that, if you want to give access to entire, you can use the asterisk always. Asterisk mean all or everything. Same thing I can see everything I have given. Yes. Similar way, if you want to with the uh, Linux machine, we are using the port that is this particular 22. I have enabled it. Same thing for the I want to allow. Um, I want to deny, I mean, inbound, okay, everything. But if you notice here, below also I have given 250, that is for the WinRM, I want to enable it. So like that, but if you notice here, this priority, every single priority has a different value, right? So the less priority, it is a high priority, it will be evaluated first. That means you can see the priority, this is 100, 200, 300, and 250, right? So they within this all the range, they will first evaluate the less number. That means this is out of these 5 or 4, this will be the less number, right, in terms of the number, but this should be the first priority to you. Okay, so the higher number, it will be a less priority. That means this will be the less priority. This is why I given the high, so that anything apart from this one, whatever request is coming, it will be considered as a what you call block. Basically it will deny everything except these three rule. One is your WinRM, second is your SSH, third is your RDP. Except these three, everything will be denied like that. Because after that it will be evaluated 300, right? So above below 300 there is no any value we have. I mean above 300 we don't have any priority. So this will be block according to this particular you define that. Okay, now this is a thing. Now let me come back. Okay, so this is okay. As I told you, this is how we need to understand it on the high level. So this all I had defined, it depends on the requirement. So now we know, right, what all required in order to create the VM. So you need these three minimum, right? These three you need, right? So anyway, you would be needing this one, bnet, subnet, energy, and then also you need to know also once you create the energy, you have to associate also. If you see here, while associating time, you have to define the basically subnet name, because as I told you, this can be basically deployed, right? This particular VM, sorry, what is energy, can be used in two different this thing. It can be associated subnet level or the NIC card level, right? But in my case, if you see, it is going to associate where it is going to associate subnet, right? Subnet level. If you see subnet and the resource group ID, sorry, network security group ID, because we need to link them together. It will not work just like that unless you link them. So while linking, you have to call with the ID number always. So if you see here, I can simply use like this also. This also will work. But problem here is, if you're using the count, you cannot use like this. Okay. If you use a count, you cannot use like this. If you use a count, you have to use, as I told you, with the index number 1, 0. 1 means 0, right? First one. So that means this is talking about the subnet. So if you go to the subnet, this is a subnet, right? You are using the condition, right? If this particular network is enabled, then it is going to create one subnet. But same thing, this is group taking from this index number. And if you notice here, there is something called as count, right? Count meta argument. This is for the subnet level. So whenever you are using anything conditions in your Terraform code, while writing the code or anything, you have to see like basically how the Terraform, or maybe you have used the arguments, whether you use a for each account. If you're using the count, always try to use the index number like this. And if you're using the for each, you cannot use the count like this index number. Then what can I use? You can use a for each dot value, right? Each dot value you have to call it. In my case, it is a count or index. This is I have to use with this number. Okay, then automatically this will be mapped. This is what I was explaining. Dynamic security, it has to within, because I'm just going to create a one resource group, sorry, one security group, right? Network security group. But how are you going to map them all the network security role dynamically, right? This is the reason why we are using something called dynamic block. This is called as a dynamic block. Now if you use a Terraform example also, you may get it, right? Dynamic block in Terraform, right? You simply search Terraform dynamic blocks provides a way to dynamically generate nested blocks within the resource. That means, as we all know, this is only one resource that within this we have nested block, right? Block data providers or provisioners block based on the variables X or expressions. Now, this allows for more flexible and reusable code by avoiding redundancy when defining similar configurations. So that means we are clear right now why we use it. That means if you have a nested block where you want to define multiple data, we want to pass it as a nested, you can use it like this. Now example, you can see this is another dynamic block. They want to pass some data, I call everything like this. So this is the reason why I use it, because I want to pass. If you see here TA words, I have multiple in the network level, right? I have multiple value, right? If you see here, this is one role, right? This is one role. This is another role. If you have another role, mean you keep adding, right? You simply keep adding. But how are you going to make sure that is created accordingly, right? This is the reason why, because this is not the within the BM level or within this, sorry, not BM resource level. This is inside the resource block. That is a nested block, right? This is a nested block. This is the reason why we are using dynamic. We have to use it. So yeah, so as I told you, this is the reason why we have to use that way. Then now whatever you call in dynamic, you can use this security role name from where is coming, because again we are using the count conditions. This is coming from dynamic way. This security role is coming from, because it is, you have defined it rule, right? If you go to the TFVerse or maybe variable file, you can check it. This name you given, right? This you given separate list of object, because I want to have a multiple set of property, right? This is why I given a list of object. Now it has to be map. So this is the reason why we have defined it like this. So from where is coming, then inside here for is there is something called a network, and the network from where they have to get the dynamic block, right? You have to know that forest. Now we are using forest inside your basically NSG, not not within your, it's inside, right? Inside your NSG block. This is called as a nested block basically. Here, how this name is derived from, how this name is basically we got this name. This name coming from network rule. If you go here, forest we already know concept variable name, that is a network. And then on the network we have this name. Now if you go to the here, we have passed the first network bad dot network. Then here we have defined the here, right? Here that means I want to call all this dynamically. This is the reason why I have defined it, but actual value we have passed in a TA bars, so automatically it will be called out like this. Then content, why we use the content, if you see here, basically to read some content basically, uh, Terraform content. So if you see here also example, dynamic settings, content basically nothing but if you want to read something within this thing, you have to define all the contents that, right? So it is also part of your you have to mention. So whenever you're dealing with this thing with the dynamic forest content, these three thing always must. You cannot use content without forest, either you cannot use forest without content. So these have to organize, because content, as I mentioned, it is a list of all the whatever contents you have within your this thing to map them dynamically. So these three paths dynamic, whatever rule name you have defined, this name can be changed according to your whatever name you want. Possibly you can do that, but this name cannot be changed. This name coming from the variable file, and this is, should be as it is, same format. And then whenever you're passing the value, you have to call from the security rule value dot this thing. Value dot name is coming from where it is coming from. Again, if you see here, if you see under here, right, I'm calling the value dot name. This is a key value, right? I want to call this name dot name coming from here again, like this. Okay, similar way it works for everything. Then we have to associate. This is the thing that we need to basically understand for now. Let's go with the BM. Where is that? Okay, here. Oh, here. Right. So as I told you, so now we understood, right, what are required if you want to create. So we need a subnet, we need a bnet, then we need a subnet, then we also need a what they call NSG. These three things are very much necessary for us to work with the BM creations. Then here, based on some condition, we are going to create. Let's not discuss much about here. Then up before creation, now we need to basically, we have everything. As I told you, we need to basically have the NIC curve also, a neck cut, because here only the BM is going to create. These all separate components need to be created in Terraform, right? But in your normally BM, when you create manually, you can create everything in one go. But here it's not like that in Terraform. For each resource, you need to identify what are the components necessary. You have to define the resource block and write accordingly and map them according to the your requirement. So I am good with this particular configuration. Now let's see the init card, because I have already shown that. Yeah, this is for the BM related. It is going to be created. Now it is going to be mapped accordingly also. So again, here also, I have used the similar conditions. So because as I told you, I want to define or create based on the operating systems. The reason why I want to use here is that because there is one reason why I want to define. First thing, it will be based on the environment. I mean OS type, that is operating system. In my case, Windows. Then it is going to be created. Having said that, there is a name, right? Name, basically, this is basically NIC card name or NIC name. Even the name also, normally we cannot simply use the NIC card and then that attached to the BM, because we need to keep in mind how basically the name for your NIC need to be used, right? Or maybe naming convention, we can call it technically, right? How are you going to basically make sure the naming convention remains as it is, as per your requirement? So this also we need to know. But as I told you, this all should be done manually. I know I can do it with one whatever name I want, but we are talking about a dynamic way. Everything should be done automatically, right? Dynamic way. So how are we going to make sure? This is the reason why we have to basically deal with different scenario and understand it. Now if I see here, what it basically is doing that. Now if, as I told you, this is going to be created based on the BM, but what about the NIC card name or the NIC name? How are you going to make sure? I want the BM name to be, sorry, NIC name to be first NIC, it should start with the NIC, because so that I can identify. Second, it should come with a BM name. Third thing, it should come with the whatever name, like a primary, secondary. That means, let's say example, in my case, the NICs, this should be something like that, right? NIC, whatever BM name. In my case, whatever BM, let's say BM 100, let's say. In my case, then does I can give a is2s example. If it is a primary, is2s, right? It should come like this. I can make this one manually here, but then this will not work because you have multiple for different name, right? every single VM whenever you create based on that, automatically it has to be done with the same naming standard. How we can make sure? This is the reason why we are using some variables from your virtual machines based on some this thing. Now let me show you how we can do, how we are doing actually. So as I told you, this name is coming automatically because you given initially name with this name. And this name, how did you get this name? Now if you, because we are using forest, now if you go with this particular VM module, sorry, variables, under here we have something called as a name. Name means, let me take you, if you go to the TFVers file, or maybe here, um, now see, for example, we know forest, we this we got, right, where dot the this VM name we got. Later we have a name, right, this name. So this name means if you want to call this name, this is the value. If you want to call with this name, this is a map of object, right? So I can get this name. So on the way, but if you see a TFVers file, that also we need to basically see how data types are passed. Now VM modules. Okay, here. Sorry, not here. TFVers file, right? Yeah. Okay, TFVers file. Now if you see here, this is the key for your map. This is a value, but inside here we have this name. Now if you want this name, because as I told you, we are using map of object, we are using it. If you want the NIC name to be, let's say in the nick car name, if you want to keep something like a nick NIC, then this name, let's say, right, this name, then I can give is to yes, because it is coming from primary region. If you want like this name, right, if you want this name, because it's a VM name, right, that means name I have, this is a name, that is a VM name. If you want like this name, so what you can do, you can go to the nick card where VM is created, NIC is created. In my case, it is a created. So I'll replace with this name. As I told you, I want this name. So what you can do, first call with this name. This name is coming from where is dot value. Value means by default, this all consider as the entire value for your map, entire value. And this is called as a key. Now, if you give your key, example, if you give a key, better what I'll do, I will show you this also. Let me check if I can run the Terraform maybe. Yeah, so now let's get this thing. Now if you see 9, so what is our focus? Our focus is a nick car, right? So nick car, how I want a name, I want name should be like this. Now as I call, if I call with the is.value.name, it will be as it is this name, because as I told you, this is the correct way, because this name is coming from where, from your map. If you go the here, from this particular, it will be taken here. Now okay, now if you go to the plans, let me show you the plan. Nicker, let me see if you can see Nicker, right? This is the Windows Nicker I want to create, right? If you see the, this is basically the name for your what you call local name. Actual Nicker, this is a name here. Can you see a name? This is for under this resource group, sorry, Nick. This is the name I want, right? First it should be NIC, then it should be VM name. If you create a multiple VM, accordingly it will be with the respective VM name to be replaced it. That has to be done manually. Now, but this is how we need to do. But let's say if I do some changes now here, let me do some changes. Instead of is the value, if I just give like this, what is the mean? The value means, now you can see. If I just is the value, because it is coming from dynamic from your is the key value pair, right? So according to this thing, what it has to be done, if you see here tf file, right? What we have, let me first run the plan. If meanwhile, let me run the plan. Sorry, let me go back, change the title, I mean change the this thing. Is dot name, you know, if is the key, is the key, if you give example, key is a string. Okay, then we can remove this third. Let me put it back. As I told you, if you want the same is the value, I have given is the value, right? Now if you want to change this one to is dot key, this will be error because the data types are not matching it. So definitely it will fail it. If the data types are correct, then they'll pass. You can see, right? So this is the reason why while passing the actual value according to the your this thing, you should know how the value person now is here. If you do small changes also, because the data types here, whatever we have defined here, it is not matching it. Here we given as this is Windows, here we given as some name, right? So it is not matching it according to whatever you have defined in your while passing the data. So if you want to make sure that is working, so as I told you, first understand this level under here. What we want to pass, as I told you, you want to pass in the VM. I want to pass the name. Now we are working with the forest, right? So this is a key and this is a value. This is the reason why I'm using a value pair, right? This is a key always. On your right side is a key. Sorry, left side is a key. Right side is a value. This is the reason we have used it here as in, where is that? Here value. Okay. So we need to know value. I have used it. If I just use a value also, as I told you, this will not work. This will be different. You can see like that. Let me type. If you type the value, see, it will not work. Okay. So we need to define accordingly.
Bro, in the 95 or 94, the spelling is wrong, I guess. Value.
Which one?
95 or 94. 94.
No, what is 94? Line number? Huh?
Yes, line number in the main.tf. The
94.
main.tf. 94. Value spelling. 94.
Ah, which one? No, we are doing BM or we are doing NIC level only, right? Oh, how come we change this one? Okay. We are doing the NIC level, but how come I change here? Dot name. Maybe, oh, that time maybe when I was working, I maybe, okay. So as I told you, so while
It's below
passing
also, bro. 95 also.
95, uh, how come I missed it? Oh, maybe, okay, okay, got it, got it. That time I was showing, no, that time maybe I got, no, this thing. No problem, I can use this thing. Right, I'll use this thing. So like for script inline, I don't need for now. So always see the line number whenever you fill anything, right? You get some idea. Let's not focus. Let's come back here. Nikar, yeah, right. So now if you see here, now what we have given is the value or name, right? So this is the correct name. Let me remove this one. Is the value, what happens? You see here, this name will not distinct. So that is the reason it is asking what string is required. Why string is required? Because if you see here, for this is a string, right? Name I required. I want to pass it here, or whatever value I want to pass, whether it is BM or anything, right? I need to pass the string, right? Because if you go here, we have defined the data type as a string for name. All strings required. So this is the reason why it is asking me to basically define is the value is an object, because is the value is the object, right? Now is the value I given, is the value, how is it possible it is object? Because is the value is object is telling, of course it is an object, because if you go to here, this is object, but we are mapping is object. That's the only difference. But each object would have their properties, right? So or attributes. This is the reason it is telling me to define a string. String means for each object, whenever basically you're working with the object, right? You need to define the data, the string also, because whether it is string or anything, basically data type is defined. But okay, now let me change it then according to that. If I change this name, is the key. Let's say if I give a key dot name, if I give a name, let's see what happens. I think this is the one. Yeah. See, yeah. So this is the reason why data types, while passing it, just check what is the data type, whether it is key or value, right? So in my case, it is a value, because as I told you, you are basically calling with this name only, right? This is a key, this is a value. I don't need this thing, so I have to call it with this name. This is the reason I have to use a value. So I have to change this one. Sorry, value. Okay. So then this name. And one more thing I notice, like even in this thing, what people are doing mistake is that, let's say this I can ignore for now. Okay, this is good. But then let's say uh, I'll use a name again, but this time I want to call the NIC name only with the BM name, or maybe dynamically I have to define it. What normally we can do, one way we can do is, if you have already this thing, we can use can we use a for like this in forest, can we use a where dot BM or whatever the BM, right? Virtual machines, virtual machines. Can we use like that dot something name like this? Can we use something like this? Can somebody tell anything? Can we use like this? We cannot use like this, first thing. But if you want BM name to be called, we can use it, but this will not work like this. Whenever, if you notice, if you want just BM name should be as the nick card also. So what I can do, I can simply use a where dot then name, BM name like this. But here problem, this will not work properly. So what you can do is instead you can change this one, because we are using a forest, right? So always, because this name always we are basically passing the value whatever from the variable this thing, right? So after this one, if you want the BM name to be your NIC name, you can if you go to the TFRs file, under this is a BM name, right? Under here I want to call with this name. That means BM where dot BM, what's the machine name already you're passing, then you have to call with this name, right? You have to use the is dot value, right? So you can define like this instead of this thing. um, is dot value, because the I want a value dot what I have to put a name. That means now the NSC card name would be as it is the BM name. Okay, so that is a many way of doing it. Now this is a one way of doing it. Now as I told you, you have a multiple values basically. If you see here, right, let me remove this one. Now if you see here multiple, I have a, this is one value, this is one value, I have defined it. So whenever you are actually defining two different variables, right, if you're defining two different variables using this thing, you have to use always using this if you see here. Otherwise, as I told you, I don't have to use if you want to use one single variables. Now I am using two variables because one is a for the BM name variables, second is a environment variables, right? Two variables together I'm combining it as one. That means the BM name would be something like this, right? Whatever name I have mentioned it. But if you want only one variable, environment variable, in this case you don't need to define like this. You can simply define single value, just I showed, like this I can call it single value mean. But whenever I use a deal with a multiple combining two different variable in one name, then I have to use the um, this thing dollar sign and color braces for each variable. Also I have to call with this thing double quotes. This is very important, otherwise your data will fail. Okay, I think yeah, that's the thing. So you have to just try to explore what is there, what is not there here, because as I told you, you had many things to explore here. Go through the public IP also. So if you go with the public IP also created based on some conditions again, right? So this also try to understand. Then there is something called as a Terraform Mars function, where you need to know that means if you want your basically tag, whatever tag I have defined here has to be map or merge with your OS type is equal to whatever name you mentioned or dynamically. So I can give as a Windows, that means this name is coming again from the forest, right? We have a type. Type means again, if you go to the TFWords file, be given a type, right? Windows. That means it is easy for now. So automatically this tag should be done based on the operating type. So that way we can define it. So that means now this whatever tag is there, that will be there along with the OS type. If it is a Windows, type is equal to whatever Windows mean, it will come as a Windows. Linux mean, it will be a Linux, like it should come automatically. So like the recap, you can do lot many others as well. Okay, so yeah, so you can just have a practice this one. And having said that, the assignment part, you can, what you can do is, there is a documents given already, right? This one, right? The assignment is given. Always go with the first module, like day one. You can take the reference of the variables. Let's say I have the variables here defined. This try to use always the same format, same what you call environment. We have to define this way. Same thing, resource group define this way. Tag also define this way. Same as it is. Try to define every single resource that you're trying to basically perform any uh, what they call, you want to practice something, right? So that way you can practice it. Second thing, you can go to the main.tf, understand what it is, everything, how it is written. Then as I told you, rest you need to understand also how these data types are passed, everything. Then providers is something that you would be needing it. So in this case, you have to define the subscription while doing it. Okay, put your subscription details here, ID I mean, because it is a public repo, so I don't want to define the subscription here. Then TFVers we already know, right? So we are passing the environment variable, everything, change the value you want to change it, right? So yeah, that way you can define it. So just go through once again this repo also, so practice it. So as I told you, go with this second or task also if possible. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much team once again for joining us. Maybe yeah, we'll see you in the next session. Maybe next weekend we'll start with the pipelines, Terraform, using Terraform, and also we will see some more hands-on on Terraform also. That is about the Terraform provisioners, right, and the null issues. Yeah, thank you so much once again for joining us. Bye.